Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back. And if you are new, thanks so much for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. Today I will be talking about all of the books that I finished in May, including my rankings for the books that I read for the BookTube Prize quarterfinals. And I have a huge apology to make for the BookTube Prize. And I will also share a cover review. So I'm going to start with my rankings and the results of the BookTube Prize quarterfinals. I was judging for the fiction category, Group B, and I'm going to tell you about them in the order of least enjoyed to most enjoyed, and I will also let you know if they made it through to the semi-final round or not. So, beginning with my 6th place ranking. And I do know that this may be an unpopular opinion, and believe me, I really wanted to enjoy this book, but The 7 Moons of Maali Almeida by Shehan Karunatilaka was just not a book for me. I really like the concept of this book, which is that a man from Sri Lanka, Maali Almeida, has died, and we meet him in sort of like this in-between kind of world. He doesn't know what's happened to him, he doesn't know how he's died, and he needs to sort a number of things out. Maali, when he was alive, was a photographer and was covering the war and conflict in Sri Lanka, and now he basically has 7 days or 7 moons to, I'm going to say, get a few things straight, and he needs people to find this box of photographs that supposedly will help the people of Sri Lanka. So I started this book in early May before I went to Italy, and I struggled through the first half of it. Every time I put it down, it was not a book that I wanted to go back to. I never connected to the main character, and I found a lot of it confusing. At first I thought the confusion was okay because Maali was experiencing confusion as well. So I thought that maybe that's what the author wanted. So I don't know if it was intentional, but it wasn't enjoyable at all to me. Now, I never read it all while I was in Italy, and this is where I need to apologize to Robert from the BookTube Prize and to my fellow judges. I had finished all of the books before going on vacation except this one. I had less than half of it to finish when I returned home, and I knew that I would have 2 days to finish it. And if I hadn't been judging the prize, I would have DNF'd this book. But I got it done, and what ended up happening in my very jet-lagged brain was that when I finished the book, later on I went online and to put in my rankings, and the ballots were already closed. And I somehow missed a day along the way, and I feel so bad because I was all set and I thought I had everything figured out. So my sincere apologies to Robert and to my fellow judges for totally messing up on this one. I'm not sure that my rankings would have really changed anything, but I am very glad that this did not go through to the next round. So that was good for me. The book that I put in my number 5 position was The English Understand Wool by Helen DeWitt. This is a super quick novella, really, maybe, I would say maybe even a short story. The main character is Marguerite, a 17-year-old girl who has grown up in an upper-class family. Her mother is French and her father is English. And Marguerite has been taught how to be proper, the proper etiquette, the proper way of, doing everything, and how to get the best of the best and not settle for anything less. So the way the story is structured is that Marguerite is writing about her life. She's writing a memoir, and she's telling stories about her parents. The other voice is her publisher, or editor, I guess, who attempts to prompt her to go deeper with her memories and stories because it's kind of standoffish. And it doesn't take long to realize that something quite traumatic has happened in Marguerite's life, and that is eventually revealed. And the irony is that in some ways, the publisher is also doing the same thing to Marguerite. So in many ways, this was a clever story, and I did enjoy how it was told, but the story didn't stay with me at all. When I was actually preparing for this video, I had to look the book up again to kind of jog my memory about what the book was about. So it was a solid 3-star story for me, and again, I am not really disappointed that this didn't go through to the semifinals. So the next 2 books are where things got a little tricky. I knew my bottom 2 books, but these next 2 books, I rated both of them the same. They are both 4-star reads for me. But I had to decide which one to put in the bottom 3 and which one to put in the top 3, giving it more of a chance to go on to the next round. So I think what I'll do is I'll tell you about the books first, and then I'll tell you how I ended up ranking them. How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagmatsu is basically a collection of short stories that are sort of interconnected. I loved the writing. I loved the ideas. I thought they were ingenious. I liked that the stories were quite dark and believable. Many of the short stories stayed with me, like an amusement park where you can take dying children who will remember a fun, happy day, but then, you know, take the last ride on a roller coaster to their painless death. So yeah, that got my attention. I thought the short stories dealt with heavy topics in unique ways, and I definitely wanted to read more by this author, which, you know, for me is always a good sign. So the other book is Foster by Claire Keegan, and I read small things like these last year for the BookTube Prize, and I liked it, but I wasn't as enamored with it as I know, you know, many other people were. But I really enjoyed Foster. It's another novella, a quick read. It's set in Ireland. In this story, a young girl is sent to live with the Kinsellas, who will foster her until she, you know, is ready to go home. My favorite part about this book was their relationship. It is such a beautiful and tender relationship, and you can tell immediately that this girl, I don't think she's ever named, but anyway, you can tell that she feels safe and feels cared for. And as the story goes on, you learn more about the Kinsellas and their own family and why this young girl is cherished so much. So like How High We Go in the Dark, this story also has heavier themes, but it deals with them in a very different way. So I had to make a decision on which book I would put through, and I chose How High We Go in the Dark to be book number 4, and I put Foster as my book number 3. My reasons were that because How High We Go in the Dark was a collection of short stories, and there were some near the end that I didn't enjoy as much, and for me it made the collection a bit disjointed. So I had to put Foster through because it just had more consistency, like the feeling and vibe of the book stayed the same, and I did love the relationships in the book as well. Now for the actual results of the quarterfinals, both books went through to the semifinals. So in the end, it doesn't matter. And I can't say that I'm surprised because I did think that both books were, you know, definitely enjoyable. So the book that I ranked as my number 2 book was Take My Hand by Dolen Perkins-Valdez. I don't know why, but I was not expecting to enjoy this book as much as I did. I gave it a 4.5 star ranking, and this book is based on true events, which is kind of scary. It takes place in the 1970s in Alabama, when Sybil Townsend begins working as a nurse at a family planning clinic. She quickly becomes connected to a family with 2 girls who are only 11 and 13, and they're both on birth control pills. And Sybil immediately feels like something isn't right, and over time, as she gets closer to the girls and the family, she does her best to help them out. And then she realizes that the problem is much bigger than what is going on at her own clinic. So this is a really good story and shows how Black people, poor people were treated or really mistreated. I thought the story was told well, and I definitely learned something from it. It didn't quite make a 5 star for me, but it was really close. And actually, even now, like, I don't really remember why I didn't give it 5 stars, but something did hold me back. And I would definitely read more from this author. And I was not surprised to see that this went through to the semifinals. So you know that 3 of the books that went through, and that means that my number 1 book didn't go to the semifinals. And I am so disappointed because I absolutely loved Now Is Not the Time to Panic by Kevin Wilson. I mentioned last month that I believe that I found a new favorite author, and I had read this book, and I also read Nothing to See Here, and I loved them both. Now Is Not the Time to Panic has everything I love. It has great characters, a little quirky, really unique storyline. It was funny. It's kind of a coming of age story. It takes place over a summer in Tennessee when 2 teenagers who are, I'm going to say kind of loners, they become friends. Frankie and Zeke, they make a poster that captures the attention of the entire community and beyond. And they have put the poster up all around town, and people are really taking notice, but no one knows like where the posters are coming from and who is putting them up. No one even knows exactly what they mean. And it takes the community, and like I said, beyond, kind of by storm. So meanwhile, these 2 teenagers who are pretty harmless, very talented, that summer it affects their lives, you know, and a couple of decades later, the story is about their relationship and how something fairly innocent became really big. So I adored this story and the characters. I think I've said before that Kevin Wilson is writing stories that, you know, I don't even know that I need to read until I've read them. So I hope to read all of his work. So stay tuned for more about him in the near future. I am bummed that this didn't go through, but there was some pretty tough competition in this round. So I would definitely still recommend this if, you know, you like quirky characters, smart writing, and a little humor too. So those were my BookTube reads over the last 2 months. I did not sign up for the semifinal round. I missed all of that as well during my jet lag, but that's okay. I'm still following along, and I look forward to seeing what books do make it into the final round. Now, because I was away for half the month of May, I only read 5 books the entire month, so I did not do my usual amount of reading, not even close. And 2 of those books were for the BookTube Prize, so it only leaves basically 3 more books to talk about. First, I will talk about a group read. As you probably already know, I am doing a reading project with my good friend AJ from AJ Dunn Reads and Writes, and we are reading all of Toni Morrison's novels. And I talked about Tar Baby at the beginning of May, which was published in 1981. Her next publication was in 1983, and it was Recitatif, which is a short story, and it's actually Morrison's only short story. And because it's not a novel, it's not part of our reading project, but the Up to No Good book club just happened to decide to read it, which I thought was perfect timing. So Recitatif by Toni Morrison was my group read, even though in the end I wasn't able to join them for the discussion. The idea of this book is very interesting. The two main characters are 8-year-old girls, Roberta and Twyla, and they meet at a shelter and they become fast friends. And one of them is white and one of them is black, but like as the reader, you're never told which one is white or which one is black. And the idea being that we are supposed to figure that out for ourselves, and I guess see what clues or perspectives make us think the way that we do. So it's an interesting experiment. And I have to say that for the most part, I actually didn't spend time trying to figure it out. So that kind of got lost on me. But what I did find interesting was their interactions when they are older, and especially when they are remembering back and they remember another character in the story, Maggie. And they differ on events happening, and they even differ on what color Maggie's skin is. And I thought it was Maggie's character, and also how the girls reacted to her and to their own mothers as well. That was the most interesting for me to ponder. So this was a solid 4-star book for me, and I'm glad that I read it in between the two books for the Tuesdays with Toni project. The next book I read as a buddy read with Roz from Scallygandling about the books, and we read Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. I had heard so much about this book, so I was so glad to be able to read this with Roz. Even though I think I left for my trip without really kind of wrapping things up, so I apologize to Roz. This book is impressive when you think that it was written in the early 60s. I can see why it would have shaken things up a bit, and yet at the same time, I think that, you know, we've known this information for so long, and we are still not doing a very good job. So Silent Spring looks at how pesticide use is harming the environment, and how the chemical industry knowingly gave false information to the public in their marketing. And it kind of reminded me of smoking and how prevalent smoking was until, you know, someone finally showed what the tobacco companies were doing. And, you know, a couple of things that I appreciated the most about this book is that Rachel Carson does a superb job at showing how everything is connected. The water we use or abuse affects others. A change in the environment really changes everything, and how we tend to be more about having the perfect manicured lawn, you know, without bugs or weeds because they're pesky, when in fact there's a really good reason why, you know, they exist and they are important. So Rachel Carson asks the questions, you know, who decides what is inconvenient or a nuisance? And is anyone thinking about the overall effects of what this is doing to the environment? So I did feel while reading this that even though we know more about pesticides, thanks in large part to this book, I feel like we still have a long way to go. It was really interesting reading this, you know, 60 years after it was written, to see what has changed and what has stayed the same. So thanks again to Roz for reading this with me. I really enjoyed our buddy read. And then the last book that I have to talk about from what I finished in May is Finlay Donovan Knocks 'Em Dead by Elle Cosimano. This is the second book in the Finlay Donovan series. And as tends to kind of happen with me and series, I didn't enjoy this as much as I did the first book. I gave the first book 5 stars, and this was a 3.5 to 4 star for me. The premise doesn't really change much from the first book. Finlay Donovan is, writing a book. She's behind as usual. This time around, her ex-husband is the person, like, someone wants to have him killed. So Finlay and Vero, who is her live-in nanny and kind of partner in crime, they get caught up in trying to save his life and find out what's going on. So I feel like this is trying to be a bit like the Stephanie Plum series, but it doesn't pack the same punch for me. I didn't find this book as comical as the last one, and I wasn't invested in the crime part of it, really. I know that there's still a couple more books in the series are coming out, and I might give the next one a try, but it's not at the top of my list. So let me know if you have read this series and if I should keep going or not. I want to hear your thoughts on that. The last thing that I want to share is a book that I didn't count in my finished books, but I did read it. As many of you already know, there is an anthology of short stories in the works through a new press, the Stygian Society, founded by BookTube's own Pavio and Holly Rhiannon. And this anthology has over 20 authors from BookTube and AuthorTube, and I am honored to be one of them. And I was able to read a copy because we got a sneak peek. There are some really great stories in this collection, and we are now able to reveal the cover. So I am going to put a picture of the cover up for you. And I will also leave links below to all of the authors who are involved in the project. So you can definitely go and check that out. And I will also put a link where you can purchase a copy of the book if you're interested. So it will now be published on July 1st, which is a new date. So keep an eye out for that. So those are all of the books that I finished in May. Please let me know if you have read any of these, if you are interested in any of them, are there any of them that are on your TBR or just went on your TBR? And let me know what book you read in May that was your favorite of the month. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.